Torture is any act by which severe pain or suffering, be it physical or psychological, is inflicted intentionally on a person in custody or under control of another person for such purposes as obtaining information or a confession, intimidating, coercing, or punishing the person, or for any other reasons based on discrimination of any kind. Torture is a crime under international law, and it's one of the most serious international crimes, given that the use of torture aims at violating the human dignity. And the prohibition of torture forms part of the so-called customary international law, which means that every single state is bound by the prohibition of torture, regardless of whether the state has ratified any international conventions prohibiting the use of torture. The use of torture is prohibited absolutely and cannot be justified under any circumstances, which means that a state cannot invoke any exceptional circumstances to justify the use of torture, including a situation of war, a threat of war, any threat to public safety or order, or any kind of public emergency. The international community has condemned and prohibited the use of torture in various documents, including the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, as well as the core document in the fight against torture, the United Nations Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhuman, or Degrading Treatment or Punishment. This convention was adopted in 1984, and so far 170 states have ratified the convention, which means that most of the states have undertaken obligations to prevent torture within their jurisdiction. When we talk of jurisdiction, we mean any space that is under effective control of the state, be it within their national borders or outside. With this convention, the states have also undertaken the obligation to prosecute anyone who is on their territory and is suspected of having committed torture. In addition to international conventions, the regional human rights instruments have also an explicit prohibition of torture in them, including the European and the Inter-American Convention on Human Rights, as well as the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. Torture is criminalized by the international criminal law. So torture committed in context of an armed conflict and in connection to it could amount to a war crime in sense of Geneva Conventions. And a systematic or widespread use of torture in peace or war times could qualify as a crime against humanity. These crimes are defined and criminalized by the Rome Statute and can be prosecuted before the International Criminal Court. As any other state, Germany is bound by the universal prohibition of torture, even though its national laws do not include a standalone criminalization of torture as an individual crime. Germany is bound by the obligations under the convention that it ratified, including the United Nations Convention Against Torture. Thus, Germany is obliged to prevent torture and prosecute anyone who committed torture. Germany is further bound by the provisions of the international criminal law that criminalize torture as a war crime or a crime against humanity. To comply with the obligations to prosecute international crimes, including torture, Germany adopted a special national law that allows the German federal prosecutor to investigate international crimes even if the crimes have no direct connection to Germany, meaning that they were committed by a non-German national against a non-German national outside of the national borders of Germany. The law is called German Code of Crimes Against International Law. In order to effectively implement the law, Germany created a specialized war crimes unit that is tasked with investigation of international crimes, including torture. The unit was formed in 2008, and since then it conducted a number of investigations, which in certain cases led to a successful conviction of the perpetrators. The War Crimes Unit collects evidence on the alleged crime, witness statements, pictures, videos, documents, or any kind of information on the crime itself or on the perpetrator. Germany does not allow prosecutions in absence of the accused. Therefore, a perpetrator must be arrested and extradited to Germany to be tried. Even if the investigations do not lead to prosecutions in the end, they are still vital to secure evidence for potential future trials, for example in another state or before the International Criminal Court. International crimes and crimes of torture must be investigated and prosecuted because it is an essential step to stop impunity for those crimes.